Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Sidzik. I'm a manager with KPMG Cybersecurity Services based out of Chicago, specializing in identity access management, privilege access management. Joined on stage by TK.
Yep, I'm Tanka Chim. I'm a specialist writer at KPMG based out of Santa Clara office. I'm also specialized in IAM, PAMs, and CIAM.
Cool. Right. All right, so thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. I want to talk to you about privilege account governance. And privilege account governance is a topic that we've been talking more and more about with a lot of our clients. And the conversation typically starts off with going over improvements and ideas around fixing overall identity access management issues, right? Addressing compliance risks or contractual obligations, making sure that we have operational efficiency in place. And a lot of the focus in the conversations is around making sure that we can improve the amount of automation we have around automated provisioning and deprovisioning. We always want to have plain business language definitions around entitlements so that we can make sure folks that are submitting access requests and performing access reviews and recertifications actually understand what they're looking at. When they click the button, they understand what's going to happen in the back-end systems. And then just making sure that as time goes by, we always have a 360-degree view of who has access to what. And we run into some challenges when we start to apply some of these concepts to privilege accounts and privileged access, because we end up, during an implementation, we end up having these two separate systems. So you end up trying to do provisioning in different workflows, different solutions, different UIs. The level of detail of information may be a little bit different between the two systems. Typically within the identity governance solution, you'll have a little bit more granular entitlement information than you would have in the privilege access management solution. And so what we've done and what we wanted to talk to you guys about today is some developments in the market probably over the course of the past year or so, and then how we've built upon those within KPMG to make some more custom development to integrate an overall identity access governance solution and a privilege access management solution. And so I mentioned some of the issues come in from doing these two solutions separately, right? There's not a lot of streamlining, it's not a unified approach. So typically when we see identity access governance solutions being implemented, the focus is really around the individual users and the people, the who aspect of access. So we want to make sure that users throughout their identity lifecycle, throughout the JML process, whether they're joining the organization new, whether they're changing their roles, changing departments, moving throughout the organization in any capacity, and when they leave, that access is appropriate for their role. It's not too much access, but it's also not too little access. I want to make sure that it's just right for each of those people throughout their user lifecycle. The way that we can provide access is by managing access requests, right? Specifically asking for something. But more and more frequently, we see our clients moving to a role-based access control model, which is this role lifecycle concept, making sure that these entitlements are essentially grouped together and granted to people based on their specific job function and different HR attributes or different identity attributes that they may have. The access that we're providing is always going to be governed and in compliance with our policies and standards. I want to make sure that we're following the rules when we're providing access to our systems, to our data, to our applications. And we're going to check against that by doing our certifications and attestation activities. We always want to have an idea of what the implications of the changes are going to be as well. So there's this modeling capability that an identity access governance solution provides that can tell us, if we remove this entitlement, this is the impact to the end user. We can understand what's going to happen. And we always want to have an analytics capability to understand which access is being used by the users, what are some patterns that we can identify, and maybe we can move some things that are not part of roles, that are only provisioned by access requests and manual provisioning. Maybe we can incorporate those into roles because based on a pattern of identity attributes, we can start to group those into roles because it's always being requested by the same users. On the same token, we can also look at things that you're not using and enforce a use it or lose it mentality of, if you're not using this access over the period of 6 months or a year or whatever the case may be, we're actually going to take it away from you because clearly it's not part of your business need. Analytics helps drive that as well. So the aspect here is all around the users and making sure that they have the appropriate access. When we talk about privilege access management, it's a little bit of a different perspective. Privilege access management, we still care about the users, of course. We want to make sure that the credentials are not in the wrong people's hands. But the focus of a privilege access management solution is really around the credentials themselves. So we want to understand how are credentials coming into the environment, how are they being managed, when are they leaving? And this is really, really important now as organizations and our clients start to move into the cloud environments, right? It's a lot faster to start provisioning, bringing new systems up, taking new systems down. Keeping track of all these credentials as they're coming and going is a difficult task if you don't have a solution like this in place. There's still the access request component of making sure administrators can use credentials when they need to. And then there's credentials being securely stored, and this idea of a logical vault, right? Making sure that they're protected and they're maintained. Again, the only time you're going to use credentials, privileged credentials, is going to be in accordance with policies and standards. We need to understand all of the access that these credentials have and monitor their usage. A little bit of a different aspect, right? And then kind of underneath all of these processes is the least privileged controls, which are focused around automated password rotation. There could be session brokering. There could be session recording, which is essentially a DVR capability for administrative activities on different systems. And it's just a little bit of a different focus. It's on the accounts instead of the users as the primary focus. And there's a lot of different types of privileged accounts that we see across different IT environments. I'm not going to touch on all 6 of these, but there's the individual accounts that are more of the local administrators, which is like your default root account, your default Windows account, things that are built into all of these devices, whether they're physical devices or virtual devices, again, bringing back that cloud idea. There's shared accounts that teams may be sharing. You want to make sure you're enforcing individual accountability on those accounts. And then there's accounts that are also used by, not by humans, but by systems and applications themselves, right? It may be some sort of SSH key or API call that's integrated within an application. It needs to authenticate somehow, but it's not a person behind the keyboard that's actually using the credential. And so all these different accounts, when we start to think about them over an enterprise environment, over a client's environment, it ends up being that there's a lot more privileged accounts than there are users within the organization, or at least users who should have access to this, right? So we'll see really an explosion of all these different privileged accounts compared to the number of users that should have access to them. And we want to make sure we keep an eye on it and give those same principles of we want to understand what access you have, want to make sure it's appropriate, and we want to restrict it to business need as we're going through. And so what we want to do is move to this single pane of view, right? Instead of managing access in 2 different systems, instead of doing your access recertifications for everything except privileged accounts in your identity access governance solution, and then looking at your privileged access management solution for your privileged account recertification, we want to bring all of that data into one consolidated perspective. And we have a demo that we're going to do in a couple seconds here that showcases this in the integration that we've built, leveraging a SailPoint plugin that was initially released, I think, about a year ago. And what we saw is it was a good starting point. It gave you some level of detail in terms of the safes and the vault that you have access to in some of the accounts, but it didn't get that granular level of detail of the actual entitlements of why that account exists and what the specific permissions of that account are. With our integration, you can have that perspective. And then the other thing that we set up with this integration is the idea of these non-human accounts. When you have a solution like SailPoint or another identity access governance solution, it needs to have some sort of privileged account to be able to do that automated provisioning and deprovisioning. Can't just use a non-privileged account for those capabilities. So what we've done is have the integration go the other way as well. Not only can the IAG solution have the PAM data within it, but the PAM solution will actually oversee and manage the credentials that the identity access governance solution will use, making sure that the SSH key is being rotated, the password is being changed, whatever the case may be within the configuration. And with that, I think we can start the demo and show you how it works.
All right, thank you, Matt. So, like Matt was saying, I want to take you guys into a couple of use cases. So, the first use case that we want to look at is how can we use the IAG platform to manage all the privileged accounts. So, this is nothing new. Last year, CIS 2017, SailPoint and a lot of PAM vendors get together and they have announced a scheme extension to a privileged account. This specification actually bridges together the 2 platforms rather than they are operating on the separate ecosystem. It helps the 2 systems so that the data within the privileged access management system can actually put it into your IAG platforms so that IAG can see what are all the assets that you have in your privileged access management system. So for today, we are not going to focus on this specification, but I just want to give you an introduction on what this specification is doing. So by using this scheme bridge over here, we can look into the IAG system, and then from within the IAG system, we can see that John over there can have access to a particular password vault. And from that particular password vault, we can actually say that, hey, John, looks like John actually have access to a root account in Oracle ERP solution. He also have access to administrator account in Active Directory. So we can have a lot more details on this IAG solution. This is all good if we assume that all the privileged accounts are named in the sense that there are some nomenclatures there. This gives a problem to some situation. So let's say that the certification times comes or a approvals times come. There may be users or administrator, application owners. They might go out their ways and create some cryptic naming conventions to give your privileged accounts there. So for example, Jane over there, like I was showing earlier, she might have actually have an access to a particular password vault. Maybe it might call my password vault, it might call Jane password vault. It may make sense for Jane, it may not make sense to her manager or to an application owner. Going one step further, she might have access to a special account called something like X-RW-ERP. If you are a certifier or if you are an end user who is looking at Jane and say that, what does Jane really has in this password vault? Typically, most people, you wouldn't know. You would need to look up, contact your application owners and figure it out what is this actually is. So the problem that we are trying to solve is, in addition to the scheme extension specification that we have on the privileged account, can we do one step further to improve the usability and user visibility when it comes to access governance here? So what we actually did is since in our IAG systems, IAG system typically has a lot of data within your identity repository. So the application that your PAM system is managing, your IAG system may also be managing it. So if we look at the Oracle ERP solution or Active Directory, typically you may already have been aggregated all the Active Directory data into your IAG system. You may already know what these accounts like SVC, SPX, 135, whatever that may mean in your system, what kind of entitlement that it may translate to. So leveraging the existing identity repository data, we can just create correlations between what's inside the password vault that the PAN system is providing, and then provide more details into the system and finally say that, oh, this account that has X-RW-ERP. This account actually is a repurchase order on the ERP solution. This account could be a procure access on the ERP solutions. Or the administrator account, it could be an administrator on the Active Directory. So however that may be, we are creating correlations between the two systems based on the data that we have already aggregated. So Matt, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so basically we can start getting a holistic view for the folks doing access recertification as they're doing it, right? They'll understand what are these entitlements that folks are getting access to, even though they're documented within the PAM solution, right? Which before this integration wasn't really possible. And then it gives you reporting capabilities as well, right? So you want to understand, if you look at a specific user, they may have accounts across different safes for different purposes. You want to have visibility into that as well, and that can come through the reporting capability.
All right, so let me go into the live demo on what we have done. So let me dismiss this. So this is a SailPoint IdentityIQ instance. In this instance, we actually have the PAM system installed. So we have actually pre-aggregated all the data with the SailPoint information system. So let's look at a typical certification, what it looks like for the user before the connectivities. So when you look at the certifications over here, this is the certification for a couple of users, Donna Simpson and Francis Sanders. So in this UI, when you look at the certification screen, you would typically see that, oh, it looks like Donna Simpson's over here. She actually has an account on an application called PAM Active Directories. This can give the user some ideas on like, oh, she has access to a password vault. What does she actually has access to? You wouldn't actually know just by looking at this. So if we just provide this kind of information to the end user when you actually do the certification, people would just start saying, well, I don't want to really break what Donna Simpson is doing. She's been doing a great job at it. I'm just going to rubber stamp into the system and then say that, yeah, she should continue to have access. And I'm happy, she will be happy, everybody is happy. So this is the thing that we want to avoid. So SailPoint also have like additional details that you can look into. So we can look into informations and we can start looking at it like what are the membership that this Active Directory account has. So we can start and look at, oh, looks like Donna Simpson has AWS PAM user groups, AD groups. This is just an AD groups. It can, luckily in this instance, it is named as AWS PAM user. So you kind of get an idea that this is somehow related to PAM. But it doesn't really tell you a lot of information here. One way to solve that is you could be creating a catalog data in your SailPoint systems where you want to say that this AWS PAM user is actually giving you such and such access. You are asking like application owners and filling up your information on 20,000 of your AD groups to some descriptive information. People can start knowing it. What we have done on this is we have actually correlated these data and we have pulled up and we have improved it so that instead of just like telling you that this is just the AD group, we can actually tell you that this account is actually has a permission to a particular password vault called AWS ECS2 instances. So this gives you an additional visibilities on like what Donna Simpson actually has. So the certifier can actually not just looking at like I'm just certifying an Active Directory account. I am actually certifying a password vault that Donna Simpson actually has. And she actually has a full control on this. So another demo that I want to go into is let's take a step deeper. So this is all good that we know that Donna Simpson has access to this particular password vault. But what about more information? What is this password vault actually contains? So I'm going to go into reporting capabilities here. So in this reporting capabilities, we can actually look at like what each of these password vault really means. So in this report that we have run, we can say that like earlier, Donna Simpson has some access to an AWS, multiple AWS instances. We can look into and say that with these instances, I think when I move my mouse, it flickers. So within these instances, there are privileged accounts that are residing in this password vault. And we actually make the correlations and says that in this password vault, these privileged accounts are actually on these servers, on these Oracle servers. And luckily for us, these Oracle servers are actually configured within our IAG system here. So we can actually pull up and say that, oh, looks like these Oracle servers are actually configured as Oracle Server 1, 2, and 3, all of those servers. And because of this, we can go one step further and say that, hey, these root accounts are actually an administrator account, sysdba account on the Oracle database. So we know like from the beginning of like Donna Simpson, who just have an Active Directory account, to go all the way further and says that Donna Simpson doesn't just have an AD account. She actually has a privileged account that is actually like accessing a Oracle database here. So this is the full integration that we have done. And we also have like other reporting capabilities actually looking into the password vault, like for each of our password vault, who are the persons, it flickers, who are the persons that like, let's see. All right, who are the persons that are actually access to this. Okay, I can get better to this, like I actually have backup slides that actually shows what I just showed earlier, where you can actually look at like from the reporting who has access to like what kind of password vaults here, whether they are getting access through direct access or they are getting access through an indirect access in Active Directory. So this is the first of our demos. The second is where let's flip around. Let's flip into saying that what about managing IAG system through PAM systems? So we show that like we can use IAGs to manage all the PAMs account. PAMs can actually be helpful to manage the IAG's accounts here. So let's take a look at a typical IAG implementations over here. A typical IAG implementation, as we have done a lot, the IAG system will actually go out and connect to multiple applications like Active Directory, database, ERPs. The typical way to connect to this multiple outside applications, we use what we call a privileged accounts here. And we connect it through our connectors. We configured it. We type in all of these privileged accounts like, hey, I want to connect to an Active Directory. I'm going to ask Active Directory administrator, give me an administrator account who can manage users and groups. I'm going to type in the username and password in these connectors, put it in my IAG system so that I can start managing Active Directory. This is all good. This is what we have been doing for the last 10, 20 years in multiple IAG systems. What we did not do in that is we never think about what if like this account gets to the outside hand? What if your IAG administrator leave your organization? Do you ever go out and rotate your credentials in the sense that your IAG administrator might already have access to these accounts? They might left the organizations. They might take your credentials with you. This is a problem for us because we always talk about like during the terminations of an event, when the jobs change, when somebody leaves the organization, we always try and make sure our IAG system are terminating their user access, their accounts that they have on all systems, but we never think about that like this administrator may also have additional access that doesn't directly connected to them. And IAG systems, they typically has hundreds of these accounts. So if you have a mature IAG system that has like 200, 300 applications, you might have 200, 300 privileged accounts that are living, that are never changing in their credentials. When somebody leaves, you might lose it. So this is our typical problems that we will see here. When you have your IAG system, you say that like I have everything up and running, I'm not going to touch it. Your administrator comes in, you will say like, hey, 2 years from now, let me try my credential. It is stay was. 5 years from now, it's stay my swap. The problem in this is, it is not because like we don't want to change this credential. It is because of the maintenance and operations of like synchronizing the credentials and providing user experience, less downtimes on rotating all these credentials here. You have to communicate with your application owners that, hey, can you update the password for me? And the application owner says that like, okay, I will do it such and such day. They will give it to you, or you have to schedule a meetings and then they will come in and type it in your IAG system, and what's not. So you do that once, it may take 15 minutes. You have 200 applications, it may take like days and weeks to actually finish this. So how can we improve this process? What we have done is just put a PAM system in the middle of our solutions here. Our PAM system will actually, it provides the credentials for you and rotates the credentials for you on top of all your connectors, so that you don't need to go out and communicate with a lot of your administrators. When your IAG administrators and developers actually leave the organizations, you can do a one-click credential rotation, credential syncs, and then you can actually get all your credentials into the IAG system, and you will not lose your privileged accounts here. In addition to that, we also have connectors that actually rather than storing the credential even within the IAG system, there are some connector that we have developed so that you don't even need to enter your credentials anymore. We can actually dynamically go out and then pick up all the credentials from a password vault like CyberArk, and then actually push it in during the runtime, and then whenever we need it, we leverage on those mechanisms to actually connect to the external applications. So,
yeah, and so there's essentially two ways that we can do this through the integration. One is on a scheduled basis, which would just mean that this identity access governance solution account is changed and rotated on a schedule of every 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever is dictated by policy, right, which is an improvement in and of itself. But then there's also the opportunity to do the on-demand rotation, which is similar to the use case that TK was describing of the administrator leaves the organization. He knew what the credential was. We can go in, click it, rotate the credential, and it gets changed across the entire environment. There's no longer someone within the organization with knowledge of the password to a privileged account.
All right, so basically, let me go into another demos here. So let me log out of this. Go to an instance. I'm going to log in here. So what we have over here is a couple of pre-configured applications that are managed by CyberArk as a password vault. So in this SailPoint applications, this is not a typical JDBC applications here. This is a CyberArk managed applications. In the configuration, all we have to do is we pretty much configure that this application is a CyberArk managed. We mentioned that we want to connect to this like a CyberArk instance. And if you are familiar with SailPoint integration, you would notice that we do no longer have a password needing to configure in these integrations. So without the password, what we have done is the connector will actually go out and connect, grab the password whenever it needs to. So we can just try out to test the connections. It works. Because at the moment I try to test the connection, it will grab the password from the password vault and then actually put it in and then create a connections for us. And then we can actually have all the accounts coming into our system. One thing to also note is we have, right now with CyberArk, we have two types of integration. One is a PES connector, which is going from using a REST API of CyberArk, or the other is the AIM connector, which is running on the SOAP web service platform. AIM have a privilege benefits over PES on some use case where it can actually cache all your passwords so that when you are using this type of on-demand credential retriever, they can actually give you the password faster over the PES system. But either solutions will work here. The second approach that I want to show is for other connectors that it doesn't go out and retrieve the password because they may be, for example, an Active Directory applications here. And Active Directory applications, for us, you have to actually send the password in the IQ instance, or you have to actually send the password across to the IQ service and what's not. So what we have done is we can also have a scheduled task to actually retrieve the password and actually rotate the password. So the configuration, as you can see, it is all the same here. It is CyberArk managed. You configure all the details here. One thing you can notice is for this kind of connectivities, you can see that when was the last time this password was updated? It was just updated several hours ago. And you configure everything as it is. There's your IDs, there's the password, and we can test the connections. It is working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the password to something else, type in random characters. So the password is now incorrect. That's fine. I'm going to save the password here, and what I'm going to do is we have a couple of tasks that we can run to actually synchronize the password that we have from the password vault. So in these activities, you can just go out and do as simple as like select all your applications that are managed by CyberArk. You can go out and run this task, save and execute. It should just take about a second. Okay, it's done. You should be able to see that it is successful. So let's go back to our applications. And let's take a look and see if our connection is working again now. And looks like it works. So this is the first step on grabbing the password from the password vault. The next step that what we can actually do is it's sending the message to the password vault to actually go out and then ask it to actually go out and change the password for me because I want to change the administrator password. So what I'm going to do is there's a different task that we have in IdentityIQ. Do the same thing, configure the application that you want to rotate the password. Rotate it. In this instance, it will take about 15-30 seconds because it actually go out and change, go out to the CyberArk, ask the CyberArk to connect to the Active Directory, and Active Directory actually go out and change the password on the Active Directory. So what happened in this case is like the password is actually changed. So one thing that I can show is, I should have shown it earlier, but we can actually look at the timestamps here. Just this is on the different time zone. But the password over here is actually changed. So I can run another task again, 15 seconds. And run over it, and it will take another 15 seconds. And we can see that let's say this password is 1:RT. This is the encrypted password on the SailPoint instance, 1:RT, capital T's and what's not. Give a few moments. I can actually close this, refresh this, and we can see that the password actually changed on the system. This is a new password that we just retrieved from CyberArk, and CyberArk actually go out and change the password on the Active Directory. So we can go all the way here and go back to our application configurations, try out our connections. It stays what because Active Directory is automatically synced. So we can leverage these kind of password vaulting capabilities and make our lives a lot easier rather than setting up meetings and asking 200 applications owner that, hey, I want to change all the password in my IAG system. We can even schedule, we can have a policies inside our configurations, and we can actually run it every month if we want to, every 3 months if we want to. However, our password policy is, we can let our CyberArk where its strengths are, where it can actually control the password policies and such. I want to make sure all our administrative password and privileged account password are at least 20 characters long and what's not. We can control that. CyberArk actually manage all the credentials that is running in our IAG applications. So with that, that's pretty much on all our demos. So questions or anything? Yes. I did not quite get the questions. Sorry. Yeah. So for us, in the second demos, when we actually grab the credential, privilege elevation is not something, a use case that we actually look at because we consider that this is the only like a IAG system that needs to continuously to run for the same privilege test. So we assume that like these privilege accounts are there. We mainly use the use case just for credential rotations for us. Yes.
One of the first slides you showed mapping like the vault or the password object names to like business-friendly characteristics.
Yes.
Yeah, right there, exactly. So how did you accomplish that? Like, do you have the accounts in your CyberArk tagged with those business-friendly descriptors?
No, so this is, on the right-hand side, these are entitlements. These are access within the application itself. So as an IAG application, if we look at Active Directory or Oracle ERP, when we aggregate the account and then their membership, we get all these informations like X_H-RW-ERP. This account actually has such and such AD groups or such and such like Oracle ERP groups. These are the mapping that we do. The one that we correlate is because CyberArk is also using this application, Oracle ERP application, and we also correlate all this data in IAGs. We connect the dot together, and then we just show it over in our system. Yes?
There's the CyberArk SailPoint integration. Which parts came with the integration that you buy from SailPoint from CyberArk, and which parts were custom done by KPMG?
So you are talking about the second demos, right? So
Trying to understand where the out-of-the-box stuff stops to get to the integration and what you did in addition.
so okay, so in the SailPoint and then the pane integration module, the out-of-the-box that SailPoint provide is actually where you can actually grab the data. Let me show you. So in this first demo, this is the out-of-the-box SailPoint integration. You can look at all the password vault and everything. The certifications and everything is out of the box, but what we have done in our custom integration is when you dig into the details, up to this point, stay out of the box, but over here, this is the last mile that we have shown that like in addition to just like a normal AD account and groups, these are the password vault. So I would say the data retrieval is out of the box, but the presentation layer, we add on top of it. Same thing for the reporting capabilities. Reporting is like the data is inside the INQ integration already. We just add in custom reporting. In the second integration, where like the best integration, the custom connectors and everything, these are all KPMG's connectors, and these are all KPMG plugins for this. Yes?
So lead in, right? Sales question, what sort of effort is that?
What sort of effort?
I assume you do it for me if I ask you to pay for, right?
Yeah, this is like these are all for our clients, customers that we work with. So we provide services and then yes, good. Yeah.
We've built this. We have chosen not to license it directly, so there's not a license cost. We come in with services, help you integrate this, we'll license, professional license to the IP and the codes that you can use extended.
right? Any other questions? All right, if not, thank you everyone. Thank you for coming.